Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today, I have Alicia Hullinger, and she joins us from Washington, DC, where she's just moved a year ago, I found out. Now, a little bit of background about Alicia. She brings a very unique perspective as a cultural sociologist and executive director of ICF's Thought Leadership Institute. So we're going to dig into that in a bit. And Alicia is passionate about making the world a better place. So something we've definitely got in common there. And I hear that her purpose is to live compassionately bold by partnering with individuals and organizations to be the change they want to see in the world. I think that's something from is it a Michael Jackson song? Be the change. Maybe we'll cover that as well. And so with a holistic, integrated approach to the problem-solving process, her work is actually grounded in ethical principles for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And she says she does all of this with a smile. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ross. That's wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I look forward to this fun conversation.
Indeed. So my first question actually is, what does living compassionately bold actually mean? And can you break that down a little for us?
Sure. I think it's a nice, simple 3-word mantra that I have had over the years that helps to really ground me and center me. And when I just need to really find what, my purpose is, which is to be kind, live compassionately bold is really what I'm here to do, right? Which is to live life and to really lean into the ebbs and flows of life and in a compassionate way, right? Compassion for myself, compassion for others, and compassion for our one home. And so that's just really a continuous practice I have learned over the years. It's not something that you just all of a sudden come to a point and realize that, oh, I'm compassionate. No, compassion continues as a practice. And it's amazing and humbling when you come across an experience where you're just like, oh, wow, that's an area that I can really lean into and deepen my compassion and deepen my understanding for what it means to be human and all of the buffet of emotions and experiences that come with being human. So that's live compassionately and bold, right? That is to just go after it and, with gusto, with just, make things happen and boldly and, just to put yourself out there, take that risk and take that chance on what is important to you, what, really lights you up, what lights me up and, what I'm passionate about and to just really go after it. So that is my mantra. And
I love it. I think, there's first nugget for the episode. And it reminds me, I've talked a few times before about my intent. It's these little donuts that you have with a word that you want to either bring more of or something. And my wife's is compassion in there. It's one of her reasons for being. It's a beautiful thing to have. And that really resonates of compassion for all things, I think is an important part, especially I think you'd get on well, about planet, animals, and people. That's the order for my wife, certainly animals before people. And it's finding what resonates for us, right? And I think that's an important part of it. So in terms of your background, experience with working inside multiple universities at the Red Cross and now at ICF, the International Coaching Federation, can you perhaps share a story of maybe along that journey, an experience that when you look back was maybe a pivotal moment that shaped your career or shaped your thinking through your journey so far?
That's a great question. I feel like I'm constantly taking pivots. And so I don't know if I could just pick one pivot, right? I mean, it just seems like a lot of my journey has just been very eclectic, and it has just been an exploration, one of exploration and discovery, right? Which is, starting out in my early years in, the professional world, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but it was a lot of exploring and discovering what I did not want to do. And so, if you look at my eclectic background from the Red Cross to Merrill Lynch to, for-profit, nonprofit, government, academia, it's a little bit all over the place, right? And so that, I think, has been a discovery and exploration process. And so I'm trying to answer your question, Ross, as far as getting to that pivotal moment.
There's often points in people's lives where, as you mentioned, we discover, we find things and go, don't like that, quite like that. Maybe I want to try that. And we evolve this sort of journey, and certain things shape our decisions, shape our philosophy, shape, why compassionate, having a bold view on life. And they'll come from family, from environment, and from things we explore when we work. And often it shows up, and it's, hard to see in the future. But when we look back, we can find little moments that, oh yeah, maybe that was an influence. That was maybe a bit of a trigger when I worked here or did that. So I appreciate, it's one way you have to really quite think, don't you, Alicia?
Well, that's what we're here to do. And actually, so thank you for helping me think a little bit more about this question. And I guess I can share a personal experience and a professional experience to get at your question, which means it's not selecting one thing. So I'm going to just, deviate a little bit. So personally, if I look at my, growing up, two of my favorite gifts from my grandmother, she gave me a globe and a dictionary. And those, I think, really symbolize who I am and my journey. I remember as a kid with that globe, I just loved that globe, and I would spin it and just, put my finger on whatever place I would stop it at, and I would just look at, that place and just imagine the people, the culture, the customs, the food, and just what it would be like to be in that place. And so I love travel, and that's something that has always been a big part of who I am. And I think that's also a great learning and opening up when you're able to travel. You just gain so many new experiences and insights when you go to different countries or even different cities and places. And then the other one, the dictionary gift, that I think really speaks to my being a sponge for information and my curiosity and for knowledge. And, again, going through the dictionary and putting my finger on a word and, figuring out how to pronounce. Well, I'm not very good at pronouncing a lot of words, but, learning all these different words. So that's, I think, what I can, and I guess that's not really a pivotal thing, but I think that's still, that just came to mind for that question. And I think the pivotal thing was really getting my PhD, going to grad school. And a PhD in sociology, I think, has really been pivotal for me in the sense that it has deepened my deepened my understanding of who I am at the core. And I'm a, this sociological lens that I have has been turned on, and you just can't turn it off. And so, in my personal and professional life, this sociological lens is always on. And that's really just seeing the world through relationships and processes, and making connections and seeing different patterns as far as how the interactions of relationships and processes come together. So that would be a pivotal moment.
It's interesting you say about when you think of something, a gift, an event, And then we try to rationalize, okay, so what did that dictionary actually really mean to me? Oh, and it was part of, connections of discovery, of looking at things, same with the globe. And then your sociology piece of thinking about, well, how do different people interact with each other to do stuff, to solve problems? And what popped into my head, Alicia, was a film I watched a couple of years ago called The Professor and the Madman. And it was the story of how the Oxford English Dictionary was created. And I had no idea how it was, came to be, and what all the trials and tribulations were, and what some of the challenges were in creating it. And just that beautiful juxtaposition of these individuals in a pursuit of advancing something in the world, and from very divergent environments. I just found a fascinating story. I don't know, have you ever seen it?
I have not, but it does sound like something I need to put on my list.
You should definitely check it out. It is fascinating study into relationships and a moment in time. I quite like the sort of play between, true story, true events, and then dramatized through, great film and storytelling, which is pretty cool. So in that sense, then, where you've gone through all of these parts, where it takes you to now, what is it that really excites you most about your role in ICF, and particularly around the work that's being done for thought leadership and having an institute around that for the betterment of coaching? And I know you've been involved in a number of publications, which we're going to dive into it in a bit, but what is it really around where you find yourself now that's most exciting in that space for ICF in the Thought Leadership Institute?
Where do I start, Ross? That's a great question. Goodness gracious. Well, we're a startup, so, things are just fast paced around here, and things are constantly changing. So that keeps us on our toes. And what I really appreciate and get energized about is the creativity and the people that I get to work with, the talent that I get to work with, and just being, open to the creative process, right? When you're trying to create something new and you're not exactly sure what it is, it's a lot of the whole throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And two of my board members are Italian, and they probably would not want to hear that. And going to Rome next month, I probably shouldn't be saying that. But anyway, the creativity is definitely something that's very rewarding. And I think just really coming up with something new and, charting this territory that is so unknown, and really thinking about the future of coaching and beyond, and the possibilities. It's really about opening up the imagination and being comfortable in the unknown, right? Which is very much the part of the coaching mindset. But this truly is like being able to, lean into that space of, we don't have everything necessarily figured out as a startup family organization. And we're having to really experiment and test and see what works and what does not work. And yes.
And it's a beautiful opportunity. I had on a previous show episode, Magdalena from ICF as the CEO come on, and I'm not sure how far it was between when a lot of restructuring, rebranding into multiple divisions, multiple areas that was going on. And this whole, for me, idea of the age of coaching is upon us, where previously, we had these transformative things, which might be external in terms of technological ones. We had then process things of lean, or indeed just the whole structure of management coming in that shifted the productivity and efficiency and how work was done. But I think now we're coming into this age of coaching, the accessibility of coaching. I think we've still got a long way to go to make that accessible and to make it democratized, so that it isn't just at certain levels or certain stages in our career where we might be able to have access to that. What's maybe some of your vision of the future, or maybe your hope of the future in relation to that context, in relation to coaching? Let's start there first.
Right. Well, I think you hit it on the head, which is accessibility, right? And thinking about how coaching can be accessible for everybody across the world, because it is something that I think can help individuals, teams, groups, really in their own development and growth journey. And it's a spectrum, right? And so being able to have that type of support to really help individuals tap into their potential, I think is really at the essence of humanity, right? And so if we can really open up coaching in a way that makes it accessible, I think that is going to really, take us to the next level, and as a society or societies across the world. And so I think it would just really help, help individuals, communities, organizations solve problems and give them those skills.
I think it's this shift, isn't it, where, as we get to certain stages, we consider our impact, and we think from, our family unit to our community, maybe within a particular location, to then maybe thinking about at the other end, are we being good ancestors? What is it that we're shifting in the way in which humanity and society operates? And even just this whole thought of coaching, counseling, therapy, all of these sort of blended bits that maybe from the outside it looks confusing, or looks that maybe I need it at the two ends. I need it if I'm broken and I need to be fixed, or I need it if I'm an elite performer. Because I see coaches in sports at elite, or I see, counseling and coaching when things go wrong, in relationships or marriage, or, when we have issues. But there's so much opportunity in that middle, to actually live that small little shifts from surviving to thriving, from a sense of drudgery, or just I'm going through the motions, to reframing. The motion can be the same, but I can feel incredibly different about it. I know it was transformative for me when I got a coach in my own entrepreneurial journey, sort of about 15 years ago. And I can't imagine who I would be without that. And not only the coach, but the community that came along around that wrapper was just so enlightening, so freeing. And I think it is a huge opportunity for accessibility. I have a hope, same thing as you, Alicia, that we can have it more accessible. But then also, I think some of the challenges that people are facing right now for just the pace of change. Everything seems to be shifting, accelerated by pandemic, accelerated by technology, globalization, all of this hyper connectivity, and I'm interested where your work and this blend of doing research, doing academics, speaking to loads of other thought leaders. Have you seen any pockets of teams or organizations that are really embracing a successful way of transformation and navigating that new pace of change in the work context? What have you seen? What's working well? And what could you perhaps share in that?
Well, I think, yes, organizations that are shifting to the new worker demand, for example, demand for values-based organizations, demand for connections. Workers are now looking to connect to something bigger than themselves, right? And really tap into that meaning. And so organizations, businesses that are able to be human-centric are going to really help not only their employees thrive, but it will then in turn help the organization and the community and build out. And so I really think of it as that ripple effect. And so, yes, so, thinking about shifting towards a human-centric organization that focuses on development, whole person development, that work-life balance, right? And I think the pandemic has opened up that conversation a little bit more, because we're in virtual spaces, and those virtual spaces are blended because we're at work, but we're also at home, and we get to really see into people's lives in a very different way than in an office setting. So yes, I think that those are the organizations that can connect work to meaning that will help shift and shape the future.
And is that, from your view, this awakening of purpose and meaning of organizations and an individual going to work for one that they resonate with? Has that always existed? Is it now that we're just realizing the power and choice that we have? And I've got a few things that I want to touch on that have been part of my world recently. So one is the whole movement of B Corps. And how it was initially very fringe, and now we've got some very large organizations transforming their actual legal structure to be a B Corp. And so that's part one. And if I may, I might add in a quick part two, because it's linked. So part one is, what are your thoughts around B Corp in the way of helping to make that connection between belonging, purpose, and employee value, and wanting to work in those types of places? And the second one was, I just saw an article, I don't know much about it, but I just saw a headline about Ben & Jerry's, and how some of the board are not very happy with some potential decisions that the new owners, well, I say new, they've owned it for a while, but Unilever are making in terms of moving some of production to Israel or various other things, that this might damage what their essence of who they are and their value as an organization. And I'm just fascinated what this is being played out in real time, where we have companies that start up with a great sustainable mission, purpose, all of these things, they evolve, other owners, other things happen, and then there's a disconnect. And then how do we vote with that? Many walk out and say, it's not for me. Does it still carry on? So I'm just fascinated in terms of your experience and thoughts around B Corp, and then maybe if you know anything about Ben & Jerry's or something similar to that, of those challenges when it really matters, of how are we making decisions that connect purpose and value to maybe some of the challenging commercial issues that might show up?
Well, that's a great question. And I guess, what started off your line of questioning, is this new for us to be looking at meaning? And I would say no. We are meaning makers. Humans are meaning makers, and we're constantly asking these questions as far as what it means to be human. It just it's going to evolve as far as how we engage in that based on the context. So that's what we're seeing is the context of, these macro global trends. And that's, this is our era that we're in right now. As far as the B Corp, I'm familiar with, that, and I'm probably not as familiar with you as you, but, I'm more familiar with cooperative business model, for example. And so, yes, that is an attempt to really, I think, reconcile with some of the limitations of capitalism, for example, and thinking about how that to bring, the 3 Ps together, people, profit, and planet, and get outside of just the profit narrative. And so I think that's where the B Corp comes into play, is to try to, essentially look at doing business from a new perspective. And so that is the B Corp. And I think that, is important to be experimenting and testing new models and seeing what works and what does not work as we grapple with this, with all of these issues with climate change, growing social inequities, et cetera. And so, but I don't know probably as much as you do as far as the outcomes of those organizations. But on the surface, I think, what I appreciate is looking at it, at how to do business in a new way. The Ben & Jerry's, I don't know too much about that, so I'll just go based on what I'm hearing. And I'm hearing tension, and tension is not necessarily a bad thing. It's an opportunity for us to grow and learn and move forward, right? And the concept that has really resonated for me over the last few years as I have been, looking at social change models is the idea of integration. And so what I'm hearing in this tension potentially is an opportunity to integrate, which is the past, the traditional way of doing things, and the present to the future, and bringing that together and integrating it in a way where it's complementary. Because tension is natural, right? If we think about tension, we have tension within ourselves. Like, I have tension on, oh, I don't want to pay all that money for this, whatever it is, but I want something quality, and I want to make sure that it, hits all the marks, that it's sustainable, it's fair trade, blah, 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 right? And so there's this tension between within myself, and then you expand that to one other person, and there's like tension when you have just one other person, and the different values, beliefs, perspectives that they have, and then obviously it just multiplies when you start bringing more people into it. And so I think that is an opportunity for us to lean into, which is really thinking about the idea of integration, right? And bringing these what might seem like divergent perspectives together to form this harmonious whole.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of the research about the level of change required. So is it something that just can be absorbed versus incremental versus needs to completely transform something, correlates with the amount of energy required, the amount of challenge, maybe your word of the amount of tension. And so when you couple in the aspects of extreme divergence or, these elements that might be opposing together with a big transformation, and this trying to shift from maybe a past way that might as no longer giving the value that we're seeking, and we're trying and weave and knit a way towards a future. It's tough, right? It's really hard to be able to do that when you throw in these complex things called humans in the mix of it. So in terms of some of the work and research around, let's bring it back to, your area of coaching, and coaches themselves have maybe got a similar journey to go on about their own, model of the practice of coaches, and how do they go through their own life journey from maybe the practices they've been used to many of them have had to, like lots of industries, go from, hey, I did lots of my stuff in person. That was my bag. That was my playbook. Now I've had to virtualize it. I've had to digitize it. And my playbook's different. And now I'm thinking differently about my reach or the different cultures I'm now getting involved with or things. So for coaches specifically, what are some of the sort of moments in their journeys that you can help them understand to see where they are? And then equally, maybe what are some of the competencies and some of the gaps, and maybe what are some of the practices that are coming down the pike, a little bit in the future that they can be ready to catch? Walk us through a bit of that, because I know you've done quite a bit of work and publications in some of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, the easy answer is for a coach to essentially apply coaching to themselves, right? And, it's that
Eat your own food, right? Yeah.
Right. And so it's going through the same type of process that they use with a client to really then turn that on to themselves and go through the reflective practice, and really, asking the questions, taking time and space to just have that reflection, to look at where they're at in their journey, and to really see what's working, what's not working, what their current beliefs and perspectives are, and where is their opportunity to reframe or rethink things. So I think that, and then a useful tool to help with that is supervision coaching, right? And getting a supervisor who can help and be an external resource for the coach, right? So we can think about internal resources and external resources. And I think supervision coaching is an external resource that can be helpful for the coach because it can help them to be their own internal coach, right? And so I think that is definitely one of many tools, right? Again, it's thinking about just applying the coaching approach to the coach themselves. Yes. And then
I was just going to ask a quick question on that, because often it's very hard for us to see ourselves. You know, even when we do these things, we reflect, we might journal, we might apply all the right questions. We are still looking at it from a state at which, you know, we see what our brain's looking for and we hear what our brain's looking for, and we can't see our own label. So having some external is, I like that thought, I like that idea, but I wonder if there's a better term or word than a supervisor coach, because a supervisor coach just fills me personally up with oh wow, they're going to check whether I'm doing it right. And so this, you know, all of these little touches and nuances around our own journey and being comfortable with what it is we're looking for and how to interact. I guess that's the permission we can all give ourselves throughout that process to do it and bring in, whether you know it's a buddy coach or whatever it might be. But sorry to interrupt. You're about to go on to a next.
I appreciate that. You're so right. Supervision coaching, that is an awful descriptor. I agree. And language is so important in how we create meaning. And so I think we should really, you know, change that term and come up with something different. And so as you were saying that, what came to me is really it's a loving critic, right? And that's the external support, whether it's a coach who is a supervisor coach, quote unquote. But
just get rid of the visor, just a super coach. I'll have a super coach, please. Yeah, there you go. Not a supervisor, super coach. They're there. They can be my biggest fan. They can be my loving critic. They can be those sort of things.
Yes.
But it's not a judgment, you know, type thing, maybe. Yeah.
I like it. I think, Ross, you just came up with a new term for the field, super coaches. So we'll start using that.
They're the coaches for the coaches.
Exactly.
Coach. Yeah,
exactly.
Coach. They help me in my work and expand. And they're not a supervisor. No.
I like it. Yes. And then the second part of your question, I think I lost. We were talking about how to help coaches, and what was the second part of your question?
So it was in terms of maybe what's coming down the pike for them. So in their journey, so they're going through their own discovery, whatever it might be, and they're working with another coach, eating their own food, you know, super coach. But from your perspective, where you have this more holistic view of what's going on, what might be coming down the pike that they can prepare themselves for or be ready to anticipate, so that they can maybe take advantage of certain opportunities that are coming, whether that's about accessibility or about how to integrate new models or things. What is it that you're seeing at the edge of the thought leadership stuff that they can maybe be aware of?
Yeah, I think a few different areas. Well, so team coaching is definitely on the rise because we work in teams or groups, right? So thinking about the meta skill of the future, one of the meta skills of the future, which is collaboration. So thinking about really just not just that individual one-on-one coaching, but working in groups or teams to help develop that collaboration skill set and working together. And then I think also, you know, in reference to access and democratization of coaching, there's definitely a shift towards AI and platforms and working with the different technologies that are emerging and being applied to the coaching realm. So that is definitely you know, an opportunity to explore. And then I would also think or say that, you know, thinking about a coaching lens or coaching in all facets of life, right? So just finished a convening on the future of education, and for coaches who potentially aren't in that space, but that's an opportunity because that's an opportunity to help support the transformation of education, because the education worldwide really is outdated and needs transformation. So there's so much opportunity to really get involved and support that that area facet of life.
Yeah. I think I write a lot about this sort of transition shift in education, around where it was all about this pursuit of knowledge, and we go and we hold up knowledge as being something that we want, that we desire, that is, knowledge is power, right? You know, we have various sayings and things about it, to where we actually live in a world where, for many, okay, only half are connected to the internet still, but the answers to most things are out there. What the challenge is what's the right question to ask?
Mm.
And equally, if we're shifting from this knowledge economy, maybe to a imagination economy,
Mm.
you know, what can we think? What are the ambitions? What are the right questions? What should, rather than could, we be doing, from a Jurassic Park moment? You know, this concept around thinking about education, thinking about coaching, I'm fascinated as we go through these phases. And you mentioned team coaching, so I want to just dig a little bit deeper in that, because you help work on a publication around bridging the coaching competency gap around teams. What is that gap, and maybe what are some of the literature and things around how to begin, or maybe how to start thinking? So if I'm a coach and I've been working maybe with individuals, or I've done some workshops with teams, and I've facilitated some things like that, what really is the gap, and what is the opportunity that I can do by having that thought around team coaching? I think it'd be fascinating to understand a bit more, Alicia.
Yeah, so I think it's really, understanding the different dynamics that play out when working with multiple individuals, and understanding, what is the goal of the team, but recognizing that there's individuals that come to that, so it's really that systems perspective that is going to be very critical when thinking about team coaching, and thinking about, there's the team, which is the whole, but then there's all the individual parts of the individuals, and different priorities or agendas, values, perspectives. And so there's more digging to do in that type of coaching, and then, alignment, right? So working to get alignment among different people, and making sure that everybody is aligned around what the goal is, and is clear, right? And so I think that is a different type of, dance is the metaphor that's often used in coaching, and that's a very different type of dance. And it can be, for a coach that hasn't really done that before, it might be helpful to partner with another coach, to have a couple coaches that can really facilitate that type of discussion when there's multiple people involved.
And I guess also the reality is, even if you've worked and been doing team coaching for a while, the landscape's changed, the environment's changed, in terms of what the demands are of teams, from where previously maybe it was more focused about productivity, efficiency, all of those kinds of things, but they knew where the goals were. And when they were moved, they kind of did everything they could in the immune system to stop moving the goals.
Mm.
Whereas now the goalposts are moving so vastly, the landscape's moving, that I thought I came to turn up and play soccer, and now everyone's playing cricket, and now it's in a swimming pool. And all of these situations are going on. So even if we've worked within teams, the teams themselves are playing a different game with different equipment on a different playing field that further challenges it. And I think the opportunity to see that as a dance versus oh my God, I'm going grey and bold and I'm going to be ill and I need to be out of here, versus, all right, so how do we invent something new that is playing cricket with the soccer rules in a swimming pool? And, this whole, I feel inside me, this awakening that we're coming to, of what does it mean to work? and what is that learning out loud opportunity where it hasn't got the answers, haven't got these things, but we need, as you mentioned, be more comfortable in the unknown, that creating that sort of environment for more play, for more curiosity, when you have this pressure or challenge of commercial stakeholder value to create. So in that aspect, you mentioned one meta skill earlier about collaboration. What are maybe some of the other essential skills and things where you're really excited of some of the thought leadership work that's going on that helps people deal with that coming out? What are some of those other skills? And are there any stories that you can share of where people are starting to build those in either playbooks or starting to talk about them, or things that you're following that you're interested in that area?
Yeah, well, I won't talk about adaptation since that's your area, Ross. So I'll leave that for you to really dig into. But I would say, thinking about the work at the Thought Leadership Institute, it's really taking that future orientation lens, looking at the future of coaching and beyond. And so that really does require that skill for imagination and really opening up possibilities and thinking about the future and getting creative, that creative critical thinking, right? And so I think a meta skill of the future is futures thinking, right? And being able to anticipate, shape, and co-create the future. And so I think that is definitely a skill that, through our work, we can hopefully model and develop and open up those imaginations, and in the work that we are, looking to do. So that is one area that I'm super excited about with our work. I think, also transdisciplinary perspective, which means really bringing in diverse perspectives into the conversation to look at these pressing issues. And that really gets at that, that need for empathy, awareness, appreciation for diversity, because we're all in this together, and we need diverse perspectives to open up possibilities and solutions for this problem solving that we need to do. And so, for example, when we did our first inaugural convening on the future of work, we brought in an economist from the OECD and a poet to talk about the quest for meaning in the future of work. And that just really opens up a different way of thinking when you have different perspectives come to the table. So I think that's something that, I'm really excited about as far as the work that we're doing at the Thought Leadership Institute, and thinking about, how we're trying to support the development for and shaping the future. So those would be two areas, thinking about our journey. Talked about collaboration already, and, definitely partnership is important. As I mentioned, we're all in this together. So yeah, that is something that is a value for us as well.
I like that idea. You just snuck it in about bringing a poet into a conference about future of work, and these areas where we can find innovation and opportunity from the distant or naive mind, that we might think, oh, yeah, I need somebody from accounts, I need somebody from sales, I need somebody from marketing, and I need all of these various things. I need these ages, I need these stuff. And then we might think, oh, well, what about a different industry? So we've seen a lot of collaborations of where healthcare benefits from aviation and all of these bits. But what about the arts? What about these other things? How can we bring in poets? How can we bring in filmmakers? How can we bring in, comic strip illustrators? All of these different things that can help just in one of our dimensions, we measure mental flexibility, so the ability to hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. You couple that with the process of unlearning, so the ability to reevaluate something because you've now got some new data in. All of this helps us to begin to imagine and begin to have that permission to think about what would we like to create next? And I love this old quote about the future. The future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So we don't need to look very far. We can see pockets of these things happening, and it's just finding where are the ones that are going to go from deceptive to disruptive. And the speed of that is a lot quicker now. So if we can find a few of those little things and enjoy that process of bringing them in. And I think the challenge is to do that when everything's at risk. It's easy to do those things when we have space, but when it's uncomfortable, when everything's going wrong, when it's choppy water, when all of those things are happening, can we create moments in there to do that kind of behavior and activity? And I think that's I feel the true leaders of the future will be not waiting for the space. When it quietens down, when, when it stopped raining, we'll go outside and then we'll do the stuff. No, it's always going to be raining. We're going to go outside and do that stuff. It's always going to be under this challenge and pressure. So I'd like to bring us to the last piece, which is a question I ask every guest at the end. And it's quite interesting because right at the beginning, you talked about curiosity by having your globe and having the dictionary, and it was a big part of your life. When I interviewed Diane Hamilton, who wrote around the Curiosity Code, has created Curiosity Index, all of these things, talks about our curiosity peaks at age 5, and then it kind of peters out. And I'm on this mission alongside adaptability and leverage adaptability, is to get people to be those curious children throughout life. So my question is twofold. When was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Yes. I'm trying to think of, because sometimes it's just little things that I because I definitely lean into the micro joys of life, right? And so I am constantly doing little things like that, but so I'm immediately going to something like big.
It doesn't need to be big. That can be our frame. First, it has to be skydiving, it has to be big. It can be a really tiny thing. It can be a little thing. It can be the same thing, but you do it in a different way that makes it new. And that's the beauty of the interpretation, isn't it, of the question?
Yes. Well, and it's so funny because when I was thinking about, I had no idea where this was going to go. And I was like, well, adaptation. Okay. What do you need to do to adapt? I'm like, well, Ross actually can tell me what I need to do. So I don't know what I'm going to bring to the table, but, but I go to just walk, you might have a regular routine, like walking to the coffee shop and take a different route to go to the coffee shop, right? Just something simple like that. It's so fascinating to see how the brain really is like, oh, okay, this is different. Even though you're going to the same place, you've taken a different path to get to the same place.
So I've got a challenge for you then. I got a challenge. So you mentioned you're going to Rome in September.
Yes.
So whilst the big event of, first time in Rome, you love traveling. Traveling is something that you've done lots of. So there's many things that you've done on repeat lots of times, packing or going through the airport, or all these things. I'd love you to try and find all the little moments of thinking, how could I make this experience like a 5-year-old? In each of those little moments of your journey in September to Rome, to find those micro moments, find the moments of being curious in terms of doing things alien. Can you, I remember my co-founder, Mike, bought this book about couples and things. And one of them was you had to cook a recipe where one person was the hands and they were blindfolded, and the other person was the eyes. And you have to, do different things. So can you pack where, you're not allowed to use hands, or, where can you make joy? Where can you make fun to be creating a level of uncomfort, build that muscle of your own adaptability of things. And I'd love to, find out how it went, how that experience was of just exploring that joy of something that might be elements that are on autopilot are normal. Elements that are big are the easy ones to find. Oh, I'm curious, I'm Rome, where shall I go? Versus, oh, I've been here every time, or I've done this in a certain way, that can just mix it up a bit.
Well, I appreciate that playful perspective. And, last night on my walk, my stroll through the neighborhood, and go past my coffee shop, but it was a slightly different path. And I noticed a mailbox, one of the where you put in your mail for the first time. Like, I don't know. I did not know that was there. Oh, huh. And I was fascinated by it. I was like, oh, okay, good to know. I had no idea. And I, frequent that
Perfect.
area.
So inspired you now to write a letter to
Yes.
someone you haven't written a letter to for a long time, and you're going to post it in that postbox.
I like that next step, Ross. Yes.
Perfect. Well, it's been an absolute joy to hang out with you. If people want to get in touch with you, if they're fascinated about learning a bit more about ICF's Thought Leadership Institute, how do they get in touch?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can find me, Alicia Hullinger, on LinkedIn, and my email, alicia.hullinger@coachingfederation.org, or go to our global digital library, thoughtleadership.org.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's been a true pleasure.
Yes.
And I look forward to hearing from you about who you wrote the letter to and what your trip to Rome was like.
Yes. Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review, and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.